Welcome to the SLYR podcast by East Idaho Credit Union. I am Stephen, your host. With me, as always, is Bailey. And today's guest, Michelle Zeal Dingman. I always want to switch those two names around for whatever reason. I don't know why. But you're the executive director at the Snake River Animal Shelter.
That is correct.
As well as Idaho Falls City Council.
That's correct.
It seems like you do everything.
You know, I have dabbled in all sorts of nonprofit and public service and marketing and a little bit of everything, I guess.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so I want to go back. All right, so you're in these really interesting positions right now, but I want to talk about how you got there. And then we'll talk about what you do in those spots today. So rewind a little bit. Let's go into the past, the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
And what first kind of set you on the path into your career?
You know, I was that child who knew exactly what I wanted to do. In fifth grade, I had made the decision I was going to become an attorney. That was all I wanted. And I'm not exaggerating. I was this crazy nerd who set up mock trials with my cousins in my living room, and I would defend or prosecute. And I had a briefcase, and I had papers. This is sixth grade.
Was
fifth
your
and
family
sixth grade.
all like, "Oh my gosh, we do not want to hang out with Michelle anymore"?
They're like, "This girl's gonna be weird."
All your friends are like, "We don't want to go on a sleepover to her house."
I know.
Not
Shockingly,
good.
I had very little friends as a child. No, my parents were very encouraging. They thought it was the greatest thing ever. I'm a first generation college graduate, and my parents growing up were, it was just talked about all the time. It was so encouraged, like, okay, you're going to college. I mean, since I was very young, it was just always the plan.
Yeah.
So I ended up at University of Idaho in the political science. Political science was gonna be my major, and pre-law. And I go through a semester, and true story, my academic counselor, as I go to set my second semester's worth of classes, says, "Hey, you're getting straight A's." I'll make that clear, everybody. It's getting straight A's. Because the story ends with like, "You were doing terribly, weren't you?" And I'm like, "No, I promise I wasn't." The counselor said, "Listen, I got to be honest. I think you were really going to hate being an attorney." He's like, "You have way too much personality for this job." And I was like,
"Yeah, have you met many attorneys?"
I know, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I have. Yeah, now I know many, and I made the right decision. He's like, "Listen, it's not all Law and Order, which was, of course, my favorite show as a child." And he said, "Have you ever considered marketing?" And I was in DECA, which is sort of like a marketing academic club in high school. And I was a part of something called Junior Achievement, where you set up businesses and you sell things. And I was vice president. It's only for juniors in high school. I was vice president, and I won some regional awards for it. So I knew what marketing was, and I knew that it was something I'd be interested in. And I said, "Well, what's one extra semester?"
Right. Yeah, I've never heard anybody.
Because I skipped a grade. I actually skipped seventh grade. And so I was really young. I had to wait to go to school a semester because my parents were like, "You're not even an adult yet. Like, we don't want to send you to Moscow, 9 hours away."
No.
So I waited
I know
a
what
semester.
happens up there. Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, "We're already sending you like with a pager." So sit with a clear purple pager. So we better make sure you're an adult. So I already waited a semester. And so at the time it was like, what's one extra semester if I don't like this? I'll just go back to political science and I'll get my law degree. So I do a semester of marketing and I just fall in love. And I realize, this is probably really great advice, right?
Yeah.
So fast forward, I actually got to work for University of Idaho for a summer doing marketing for the building, which is called the Commons. And at the time, it was brand new and it was kind of like a student union building. But they needed to create an advertising program to create a revenue source for activities. So I was really fortunate that at 19, I kind of got to start something from scratch. I had zero leadership.
Yeah.
Zero leadership, which I do not recommend. It was like I'm creating PowerPoints with no direction.
I will say I've had the opportunity a number of times through my career to start something from scratch. And man, that teaches you so much.
Oh my gosh.
About yourself mostly, I think.
Well, and I will say that I think that theme has followed me quite a bit. So yeah, I create this from scratch. Just saying, this is a story I've never told, by the way. I don't think anyone ever known that I started working for them.
The deep, dark.
Yeah,
dark
and I'm in this little corner in some office, and I can't even tell you who I was under, like legitimately. I just know I got paid like $9 an hour for like a summer. Like no boss, no one watching me.
It's the perfect job. Yeah.
It was amazing. And I remember going in with my hot pink Discman and my headphones and sitting at this computer, just like making PowerPoints to advertise our advertising options with like no one's permission or approval. And I would just walk it to somebody and say, hey, put this on the screens. They'd be like, okay. And like, I emailed this to businesses in Moscow and like tried to sell them. And I was terrible. Okay. So I didn't sell any at all.
I was going to ask how much
traction
did you get? Nothing.
But they love what I did. Like, I'm telling you, I cannot even remember. I must have had a supervisor because I remember them letting me do it. And I remember them saying like, oh, all of your design stuff looks really cool. But I know I didn't sell $1 worth of ads. Not one. I did this for a semester. And I was like, oh, this is something I could do for the rest of my life. But I spent my entire college career managing a taco time. Okay. So I slung tacos. All right.
I love that term, but
and I was a taco slinger at the taco time at the base of Washington State University, which is like 10 minutes down the road. Okay. So I got paid way more money because their minimum wage was like $7 more. But I was managing like 50 19-year-olds. Okay. And I'm like a year older than them, basically. So I worked 60-hour weeks.
Yeah.
For 4 years. And so now people look at my lifestyle and they go, how do you do all this? And you've got kids and all this stuff. And I go, you guys, I've been doing this for a really long time.
Easier than slinging tacos, I tell you what.
Yeah. I went to school from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then I worked 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. 6 days a week. And so people are like, how do you get all this energy? And I'm like, you guys, I've been doing this for like a really long time. While you guys were just chilling, taking your little classes, I was working way more than you.
You're at taco time now, okay?
Yeah.
60 hours a week at the taco time, everything else. Yeah. What happens after that?
Yeah, so I had toured a bunch of ad agencies on the West Coast because I was born in San Diego. My mom's in Swan Valley, though. I'm not a California transplant, everyone. I have roots here. I've actually lived a ton of places. So I've lived as a child in San Diego, in Texas. I spent about 7 years in Nashville as a kid. I had a Southern accent when I moved back to Idaho in my elementary school years. So I never wanted to come back here. Like many high schoolers, I did not think this was the epitome of a good time. And so I was touring all of these ad agencies on the West Coast in Seattle and San Diego with the goal of actually becoming a copywriter. So I did an advertising competition team for University of Idaho, and I work with them now in different capacities, which is just so funny, you know, full circle. But I started this thing from scratch, you know? So I came up with this intern program they never had, and so Megan the intern was kind of a thing for a hot second, and we branded her and we sent her out doing social videos. We made a blog. No one was doing anything like this before.
Well, what year was this?
This was 2009.
It's pretty cutting edge at that point in time. I don't think a lot of people understand that 2009 Facebook just became a thing.
I had created, I had to go to Ball Venture CEO and say, I promise you, this thing called Facebook is
this is the real deal.
It's the real deal, and we really have to have one. I had to go to the CEO.
Yeah.
And kind of not beg, but really convince him this was the right thing to do.
Right.
Because at the time, not only were companies unsure, but you were opening yourself up for criticism and commentary that no one had ever had a forum for, right?
It's been really, really interesting for a lot, because I also lived through like the transition from shouting into a vacuum to getting real-time feedback through social media. And a lot of people are deeply uncomfortable with the feedback. Because a lot of it's not nice, you know?
Absolutely. And you know how much and how hard that is to manage when you have this big brand like you guys do. And so I was starting all of these things and really getting to experiment. And Eric Isom, I still say, and he knows this, I still consider him to be the best boss I've ever had.
Where is he today?
He's still at Ball Ventures.
He's still at Ball.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's cool.
So that was I was like, okay, now I'm pivoting. I'm going to be a copywriter. Well, then I started thinking about how much I really like my family.
Well.
And so we have a really small family. It's just me, my brother, and my half sister, who's 10 years older than me, who lived in California, and it was a huge appeal to go back and live there with her. But my mom and my dad and my brother were here. And I was like, you know what? I actually really like my parents, and I'm always been really close to my dad. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to go back home and find a job. I got very fortunate that literally 3 months, just one summer I was unemployed, and it was the best vacation of my life because I had worked so much in college, right? Yeah. That it was like the best summer ever. Yeah. I didn't even work. I didn't get to even come home for breaks. You know, I lived in Moscow full time, even during the summers. So, but I got the job as the marketing assistant for Grand Teton Mall.
Okay.
And I worked for a guy named Dustin Christensen, which I bet he's pretty awesome. I bet he'll watch this. And he was like, you don't have any experience, but I think you get the moxie, kid. Right. You know, I was like, okay. And he wasn't that much older than me, you know, like maybe 10 years.
This is like the 1920s in New Jersey. Yeah.
And there was no females. There was a female bookkeeper, but the mall manager was male, and he was male, and everybody kind of, the operations guy was male. And I was like this young female, which is like the story of my life now, jumping in. And I got hired in, I think, August. And I think in January he left. And right before he left, he said, listen, I want you to take my job. I think you're ready for it as the marketing director for the mall. And I'm over here like, I've been at college for not even 6 months. I don't know if I'm ready, but thank you for the job opportunity. And honestly, it set me in such a positive direction. And then I hired a fabulous assistant who was actually an intern for us. And I began my mall marketing career. So I launched the mall gift card program. I was the person who did that. And it was a really big deal at the time because we didn't have gift cards for the mall. It ruins Christmas for you because you're setting up the Santa house and you're working all these promotions. And you see all these like really unhappy retail workers during the holidays. Like, you know, if you ever watch Bad Santa or something, like that's your life in the mall at the holidays. It's horrible. I still struggle going to the mall during the holidays because people are really mean. And so I end up there about 3 years. And this is actually a pivotal career moment for me. The operations director had left the mall to go work for a company that none of us had ever heard of called Ball Ventures. And I got this phone call one day, and he said, at work, and he said, hi, my name's Eric Isom, and I am the Chief Development Officer for a company called Ball Ventures. We're developing this project called Snake River Landing. Have you ever heard of it? Well, it turns out I had, because we were members of ICSC, which is the International Council of Shopping Centers. Big shout out to trade organizations. Yeah. And I remembered their brokers presenting this fantastical project because this meeting happened in Salt Lake, and we were the only people there from Idaho Falls except their brokers. Yeah. And they said, we're building this 300-acre master plan development. And I'm over here like, seriously?
Yeah. Did you think they were crazy?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, because we'd grown up here and we had seen it was a landfill, and it seemed wild. But I was able on that call to say, I do know what you're talking about. And he said, well, we hired somebody from your management team, and he just has said the most amazing things about you. And would you have any interest in interviewing for position here? Or no, he said, in talking to us about what we're doing. And you know what I said?
I think you said, sure.
No.
What'd you say?
No, of course, I didn't do the right thing. I said, well, I mean, is there a position open? And he was like, well, we're looking at changing some things around, and there might be something. And I was like, well, I'm pretty happy here. So if you don't really have a position open, I'm pretty loyal to like kind of.
You told him to beat it.
Yeah, I did. Which is crazy.
That is crazy. That's
okay, but the good news is, again, man, that inner voice is not kicking in.
Yeah, that inner voice would have been saying, to you, hey, this is a great idea, Michelle. Maybe just go talk to the guy.
Yeah, and I've had to develop other skills, right? As I've gotten older to combat some of that, right? Yeah. Those almost impulsive, right, kind of decisions. So I hang up the phone, and then I'm like, maybe that wasn't a great idea. So
You call them back.
I call somebody else.
Okay.
I say, hey, here's what I did. And they're like, that seems like wasn't a great idea. And I said, I think you're right. It was not. So I did. I called them back.
I would have, yeah.
And the best part is,
I wouldn't have told them to take a hike.
I probably should have said no to begin with. So I call Ball Ventures back.
Yeah.
And the receptionist says, how can I help you? So can I talk to Eric? And she goes, which one? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know which one. And she goes, is he kind of a money guy or is he kind of like a development guy? And I was like, I think he's a development guy. And she's like, okay, ice him. Hold on. And I got on the phone with him and I said, hi, this is Michelle. I'm the one that just turned down that opportunity to talk with you. Yeah. I said, listen, that wasn't a really smart idea. Just you kind of took me off guard. And I haven't really been looking around. And I am just a really loyal employee. And when I see something else, because remember at this point in time, I had only been with 2 companies pretty much.
You were still a baby at this point. Yeah.
I was a baby. And I just worked Taco Time for a long time. and General Growth, which like what a job to walk into. Like I know, lucky I am. And I said, I absolutely would be interested in meeting with you. If you're willing to give me a second chance. And he said, honestly, I really appreciate that you would just call me back. And he said, yes, I would love that. So that led to an amazing position as the first marketing manager ever for Ball Ventures. I still have so many of those relationships there and just kind of really cut my teeth. And it's all because I kind of had the guts to call back and say, I made a mistake. Yeah. And it was so pivotal. I can't even imagine what my life would be like now. Yeah. Be where if I wouldn't have called back.
Isn't that so weird that like that one split second moment of you saying, maybe I should have actually listened to him, totally shifted the direction of your entire life? Absolutely.
There's no doubt. And, I tell people all the time, if you make a mistake, learn this lesson from me to go back and apologize. Yeah. Go back and try again, admit that you maybe didn't make the best choice. Yeah. Because if you're dealing with a reasonable person, they'll forgive you, they'll move on. Right. But you have to be vulnerable. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to say, I made a mistake, I did something wrong, and I'm sorry. Yeah. And
it's interesting. This is a skill set that I think marketers learn really, really early because you have to. Because your work is on display for the world, unlike almost anybody else's.
Absolutely.
Good point. So you get a lot of feedback at times, and you get good at saying, maybe that was terrible, actually. Right. And it's a really powerful skill that takes people decades to master, unless you're in marketing and you learn it pretty quick.
You do. Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, I can't imagine like where I would be if I wouldn't have made that phone call again, because that. Snake River Landing, we tried to make prominent really quickly, and we were doing lots
successfully, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great project and I had great people backing me, but that led to me getting involved in the nonprofit world in a way that led me to where I am today. You don't just jump into charitable work usually, but me, I'm crazy. So I'm at this chamber, Snake River Landing's always been really involved with chamber. Yeah. And I was like a founding member of Young Professionals Network, which they just expanded the age. And one of the guys told me, he's like, you're not too old anymore. Like you could totally come back. And I'm like, this is a compliment.
Well, like people like 48 at Young Professionals Network?
It used to be capped at 40.
Sure. That seems reasonable to me.
Yeah. They've extended it to 45 now. And so, we were really involved with chamber, and I went to this chamber lunch, and the American Cancer Society was the presenter. And at the end of the presentation, they said, hey, we really need help with public relations and marketing. Is anyone willing to volunteer? And I went home, and there was just something about it. Just this, like, you know what? Like, I don't really know what they need, and I know nothing about ACS at all. Yeah. And I don't even know anyone who's died from cancer. But why not help out this group? Sure. I'm just a helper, So I call them up, and it's like the cat conversation, but like way 15 years ago, like, hey, I have no emotional connection to your cause, but you guys seem like fun ladies. And
what do you need?
Kathy Dietrich, Joy McMurtry. You seem like fun ladies. What can I do? Yeah. And they said, can you just write some press releases for us? And I said, no problem. I do that all the time. Yeah. I couldn't even go to Relay for Life okay, that year. I said, but tell me what it is, because I don't even know. And they like sent me some videos and like telling me about it. So I sent this stuff out and I said, I'm actually gonna be in San Diego during Relay this year. But when I get back, if you want to start working on next year so that I can know what the heck we're doing in the future, I'll totally keep helping you guys because I really like you. Fast forward, they sit down with me at Ball Ventures, and they said, we have this challenge. There's this kickoff event, and the whole point is to recruit teams. We usually recruit like a handful of teams, and we spend like $1,000, and it's just got to be better than that. So I say, well, let me think about this. And this is so funny when I say this out loud. So a couple days later, I'm like, okay, well, first of all, spending money like that to make basically nothing doesn't make a lot of sense for this nonprofit.
Yeah.
I said, so how about we turn kickoff into another fundraiser, the fundraiser before the fundraiser. And there's this thing called Dancing with the Stars. Yeah. I've never seen it.
You've never seen it? Even still?
I've never seen it.
Really?
I have never seen it.
But through the title, you kind of get what the whole concept is.
I watched like a YouTube 30 seconds and I was like, okay, celebrity, professional dancer. Let's make our own. And I called them up and I ended up creating Idaho Falls Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
Never seen the show. Still haven't. And but the ladies had seen it. They were like, oh, we totally know. And I was like, okay, anything we should take from the show other than that, like blueprint? And they were like, oh, maybe this, because legitimately still never seen it. So I ended up doing some nonprofit board work. Yeah.
Okay. So you do this kind of volunteer work. It goes really, really well. And now everybody's like, hey, we need a little Michelle over here. That's got to be what happens, right?
I mean, kind of. I think it was like, well, she's got a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And I would say that is what I often hear is like, we need some energy. Will you come and do this thing, right? So I ended up spending several years on the Art Museum of Eastern Idaho board. Oh, yeah. And I was like, 30 years younger than everybody else. And I loved it. I absolutely loved every second of it. And I just ended up dipping my toe in all these things. And one of them was being a board director for what's now the College of Eastern Idaho Foundation. And I really loved that opportunity because my mom got her GED there. Oh, interesting. And I remember being a child, her going to college. I remember her taking remedial classes and again, like really pushing that message of you're going to go to college because she did not complete high school. And, you're going. And so it was kind of, my mom's college when I was little, living in Yukon at the time. And so it was a pretty cool way for me to give back to an organization that had really been very kind to my mom and I think changed, the rest of our lives because of that education piece. And so fast forward, their executive director announces she's going to leave and she comes to me and she says, I think you were meant for this job. Oh, man. And I'm like, Melissa, I have never ran like any kind of nonprofit organization. I made an event that everybody knows about. I created an event, but I don't know how to do this. It's not the
same thing. Yeah.
And, I'm not a fundraiser. I remember saying, I'm not a fundraiser. And
that's a hilarious thing for you to say now.
I know. She goes, you are a fundraiser. All fundraising is marketing and you're really good at that. So you can absolutely do this job, but I'm giving you like 60 days notice. I'm giving you a really long time to think about this. And I really want you to apply. And at the time we were partnering on this event that we had sort of co-created called the Great Race for Education. Might have heard of it, local Idahoan, Southeast Idaho people. We had created that. And of course, I didn't know at the time I'd be meeting my future husband at a meeting about this event, actually. But I found out that I was pregnant with my first biological child about 3 weeks after she told me about this job. And I didn't think I would ever be able to have kids. Doctor said that it was just probably not going to happen for me. And at that point in time, we've been training for about 5 years. And so my two oldest are adopted. And that pregnancy just kind of made me think about what my priorities were as far as the day-to-day. And I knew that I wasn't going to give up my career, but it was, would I benefit from something a little more flexible? Because I didn't know how I was going to feel, all the things that go through your mind. And so I applied. knowing I loved the mission, I had the experience, and they basically said, this is a totally flexible job as far as working from home and whatever else. So fast forward, you do have to do a public presentation that's like published in the newspaper.
Oh, interesting.
And so
as like
everybody
part
knows,
of your
yes,
application
if
process.
if you are a finalist, and I became a finalist.
How many finalists were there?
Two.
So you and somebody else.
Yeah.
And
who I actually am friends with and I know still today. But
oh, that's cool.
So we have to present in front of each other, in front of whatever audience shows up, and the board.
And so how big was your audience?
Not very big.
Okay.
Maybe 20 people.
Okay. Yeah.
Not very big.
And the person you're competing against.
Yeah.
But Is that a little weird? That feels like
I've never seen it since.
I've never heard
I don't
of such
know
a
if
thing.
they still do it that way.
Was it weird when you were in the room presenting?
Oh yeah. Because I remember that her first slide or intro thing said, "I was born for this." And I remember those words for some reason so well.
And did you think, oh no, I wasn't born for this?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there was that moment of like, well, you've got more experience than me. You do have a great story. She's a great lady. Like I said, I still know her today. And I'm also pregnant, which when, I think that people can't help but wonder.
Yeah.
A little bit like, okay, we hire you and what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. Sure.
And I think we've all been there, and you can't,
haven't, but
you can't help it, yeah, maybe not you. You can't help it. And so I'm really grateful that the board kind of took that chance on me that I would come back because, everyone makes different choices after they have a baby,
right.
and you never know. Someone might decide not to go back into their career. I took a 10-day maternity leave.
Oh my
Dang,
goodness.
that's wild.
I did.
Bailey took like 10 months.
Oh my gosh, it wasn't that long. At East Idaho Credit Union, we offer startup loans for emerging businesses to help support you in the early stages of growth. This could be for inventory, equipment, or other operating expenses. Almost all businesses qualify. Get started today by visiting us at eastidahocu.org/start, federally insured by the NCUA.
You've just delivered your own baby. 10 days, you're back.
I'm back, and I just, higher education changed my life, period, end of story. I have a lot of family really on both sides that I don't think has just ever really escaped the cycle of poverty. Yeah. And a big part of that is not pursuing higher education. Yeah. My brother, wildly successful and talented without a degree, wildly.
Some people can do that.
Some people can do
really
that,
well.
right?
Yeah. Bill Gates didn't go to college.
Exactly. You look at all these different.
Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg didn't finish
There's a
college,
ton of leaders that didn't go to college. But for me, it really was a ticket to a different life that I had really pictured since I was very little, that this is what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And so to give back in that way was so rewarding. I loved literally every second of it. And I ended up, basically remarrying, and he is this wildly talented graphic artist. And I had met him through all this charity work, which I love because one of the things I love with my husband is I never have to ask to donate or like to serve. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have to ask permission or find support. It's like, oh, hey babe, this charity thing's happening. Yeah. Like, what do you want to do? Like, how much are we giving? It's not a question because he's so committed like I am to supporting the nonprofits. And it's pretty cool to have met working for the same toward the same goal. But anyway, he was so successful in his magazine design career. That's actually what he did, that he wanted to start this little graphic studio. Mm-hmm. And within about 5-ish months, he was like, I can't do this alone. Like it's growing so fast. Why don't you join me? And it was so risky. I mean, we had 4 kids. Yeah. And basically a 10 by 10 office in our house with the baby in the playpen. Yeah. Starting something from nothing, creating a specialty in political advertising that really was coming from a very different perspective than what had been done here. And then we ended up competing with these giant ad agencies. Yeah. And it's just this husband and wife duo. And
that feels like if it was like my wife and I, there's no way we wouldn't have gotten divorced.
Listen, it is. He would tell you we were on the edge many a times.
I believe it.
When we first started out, our office chairs would hit each other. That's how close they were.
Yeah, you would have things like you're squeaking your chair again.
Yeah.
You need to stop. Yeah, it would be stuff like that.
It was rough.
Yeah.
But we just believed so much I believed so much in his skill that we could do anything.
Well, and so he's done some work for us as part of the credit union. He's fantastic. I can only imagine, like, because he has really an incredible eye for that sort of stuff. Then you, with just like your I'm going to bend reality to my will kind of ability, is I'm not shocked that you were able to take on some of these big organizations that had done it for decades.
Well, that's so kind of you. We were able to continue doing that together for about 4-ish years. But it did get to a point where I thought, things are going well, and maybe I should explore something else. Mm-hmm. I have this opportunity at FinFun Mermaid, and I never heard of it before. Mm-hmm. I Google it, and I'm like, swimmable mermaid tails. Like, this is wild. This seems like a good time.
I just recently discovered that whole thing. That's not really my wheelhouse per se.
No, not your bag.
Yeah, and
they do make merman tails.
Well, maybe I should look into that. Yeah, maybe that could be good for me. I don't know that I understand that whole industry or anything, but wild. It's crazy.
I saw this opportunity, and one of the things that really caught my eye was the international aspect of it. Mm-hmm. Because in Idaho Falls, there's so few companies that market internationally. Right. And I thought, this is different. Mm-hmm. So I applied, I got the interview, and it's so cool, full circle here, okay? Ready for this? The person who ended up being my boss at FinFun was a Snake River Animal Shelter board member.
Oh, interesting.
And she is the one that basically led me to my rescue dog there, which led me to the story and the passion of why I love Snake River.
Yeah.
So wild, right?
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. So I have this job interview, and she's not from here, and I just get her because I've lived lots of places, and she's not getting Idahoans, to some extent. The culture's so different because she's from Ohio, but she worked in New York City and LA and Tokyo.
Really different. Yeah.
She worked for Pokemon.
Dang.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, she's like a whole different world. But I see all these photos of her dogs in her office, and we start talking, and we just really clicked. And I realized really quickly this was somebody who I could understand, and I think understood me. So fast forward, I spent about 3 years at FinFun, and really got to experience a whole different side of sort of really niche marketing.
Yeah,
real
very
niche.
Yeah. Okay, I want you to be honest. How many of those fin things do you own personally?
I own one because I'm a horrible mermaid swimmer. I'm so bad at it.
Say, what do you do with it? Because I did go through like their Instagram. And it's just pictures of people like wearing them on the beach. Yeah. And I was just confused the whole time.
So basically a mermaid tail is 2 things. It's a monofin. So basically like a scuba fin, right, together. Yep. And then it's this spandexy tail that goes over it. Yeah. And when you do a mermaid swim motion, so you have to be completely immersed.
Is that the same as like a dolphin kick?
It's a dolphin kick.
Yeah, okay.
You can, transform in theory into visually a mermaid. Okay. And because you have that confinement and that the binding of the legs, right? It is a real skill. Little kids can learn this in like 10 minutes.
Interesting.
Wow. I could not learn it ever. And I tried. I mean, I had professionals helping me. I could not do it.
Does it make you more attractive to sharks?
I will say I've never seen anyone look bad in a mermaid tail. I do think it's a very flattering look for both men and women.
I like it.
But it was fun to do something so niche, and the culture of mermaiding is obviously very fun. It's very fantasy. And very unique.
I think it would be a lot of fun to like run a brand like that.
Well, it was fun to do something that wasn't and didn't rely upon any of my experience or contacts here. Yeah. That you're starting over kind of, right? You learn that there's these little pods, throughout the United States and the world of places that are really attracted to this sport. And you got to learn about.
You said sport.
I know.
It's a sport.
It's a lifestyle.
You race?
Some people.
It's a lifestyle.
Oh yeah, mermaiding is a lifestyle. Absolutely. But a lot of competitive swimmers become mermaids and do mermaiding. And so, because foundationally, you have to be a dang good swimmer to make this work, right?
Yeah. You have such an interesting diversity of experience because, gosh, you're marketing to wildly different groups of, like, just going from mermaid tails to, which I assume is mostly B2C kind of marketing work, right? Direct to consumer kind of stuff.
Varies, but yeah, a lot of B2C.
Right. And then going to something that's exclusively B2B kind of
Yep.
work, which is a totally different motion.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually can't do, like, they get good at B2C or they get good at B2B and they struggle.
Hey, nobody said I was good at any of these things.
Fair enough.
But I had a great time. And then, you know, a board member at the Snake River Animal Shelter called me one day, totally out of the blue, and said, hey, we are really struggling to find the right fit here. And I said, you know, are you considering me? Like, is that a thing? And they're like, is this a joke? And I said, no. And they said, you would really consider doing this? And I said, maybe. I mean, my rescue dogs
consider anything. Yeah.
changed my life. And took a tour of the shelter. I'd been there several years prior, right? Adopting my little dog Chewy. And yeah, decided, you know, as much as I love my job, I wasn't looking around or anything like that. Very happy at home. Because, you know, I was working at home prior to a lot of other people working at home. Just the opportunity to give back to the organization that really did give us the dog that changed our lives and changed my kids' lives. And, you know, it sounds almost like a made up story sometimes when I tell it, but it's really hard to describe how much our kids grew emotionally having this animal to love. Our first dog that we adopted right before this one, his name's Yoda. He's a senior poodle mutt, and he had been basically raised outside. He's got no teeth. He's all haggard, and he loves me, and that's it. And here's my 4 little kids, you know, Yoda, and he's like, you know, no teeth, tongue hanging out, you know. It was not the experience I was hoping for when I got these animals to teach them about how to take care of one, right? Because they couldn't even touch him. They still can't touch him, by the way. So my old boss, Lynn Kennedy, I still have a great relationship with today. Lynn calls me up one day and says, hey, there's this dog that just came in. I'm here for a board meeting, and I don't know how to say this other than this dog just belongs with you. And she was right. I mean, we didn't have any real intention of getting a second dog. But we came down, and my son at the time was, I don't know, maybe 6 years old. And this dog just jumped up into his lap, and I saw him experience that, you know, that puppy love, you know, that dog kissing you and cuddling you. And he never had that before. And it really was life-changing. And we call Chewy our little therapy dog because our friends come over and they're like, I just need to hold Chewy for a minute because he just kisses you and loves you. He's a Chihuahua mini pincher mix. And just walking in that facility for the first time again and remembering meeting Chewy, like, I'm going to try not to cry because I cry almost every time I tell the story. It was just so powerful. And so it was like, oh, do I want to leave my really cozy job where I get to sit in my pajamas and I get to work with amazing people? No, but this place needs me. And I want to see it grow and be successful. And this is my chance to do it.
So what do you feel like, you know, you mentioned that they called you and they said, hey, we're struggling to find the right fit. So when you finally showed up at the animal shelter, what kinds of things did you recognize that you needed to change, that needed work, that needed attention, needed a different path?
I think that, you know, the animal rescue world, first of all, it's a lot of city shelters, right? A lot of municipal shelters, and they are ran sort of on the basis of animal control. And their mission and their practices are just different. They're not bad. We love our friends at the city shelters. They do great work. But it is very different. But they had been trained by people who had only worked at municipal shelters pretty much. And so understanding that we're providing a very different experience in a city shelter, it was just very important for me to get everyone to understand that.
Right.
I'm also a clean freak, period, in the story. And although they didn't have any history with animals getting sick or anything like that, you just never know what might happen. And so I had to, you know, raise all the cleaning standards and really make sure they understood the value in that. Because if you don't teach someone why you're asking them to do something, it's very easy for them to not be invested. And this goes in anything, right? When you teach your kids something or, you know, whatever. So for me, it was educating them and getting them to understand, you know, how disease is transmitted.
Right.
How, you know, the statistics about how people actually pick out an animal and what matters to them, and being able to control that environment to the best of our ability to give these animals the best chance.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, animals who are locked up in kennels, they exhibit kennel behavior.
Right.
And it's not what they'll be like when they get home. But you have to create the best circumstances for that. Yeah. So there was a lot of retraining. There was a lot of, you know, unfortunately having to switch out staff and kind of start over. But now we're growing. We're working on building a Canine Academy auxiliary building that's going to go next to ours to train dogs in. Our construction estimates are all due October 1st. So we've got all kinds of, a lot of exciting things happening right now at the shelter. That's really going to benefit, you know, the animals.
It's great. You know, this is a cause that this is a credit union we've donated to a number of years. Yeah. Yes. It's something that we, you know, I think there's plenty of statistics and studies to show the benefits of animals in people's lives. You know, you have people with like high blood pressure, and that's really, really good for those people. People who, you know, are elderly, keeps their mind sharp. It keeps them, you know, to have like a purpose in life and these sorts of things.
There's almost not an ailment that an animal cannot either help or ease the symptoms of in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. But owning an animal also creates the opportunity for people to learn how to love and care for something so that they don't hurt one. And I know this sounds so rudimentary, but it's one of the main reasons why I wanted to raise my kids around animals was I wanted to teach them how to respect them and how to treat them properly. And, you know, not raise that kid that was running around grabbing dogs' tails, you know, and like, and not treating them respectfully. That was really important to me. Yeah. But that education side is really important. But I mean, my dad, I for his 67th birthday, I bought him his first dog. Wow. He had not had one as an adult. He had one when he was very, very young. And it absolutely has changed his life. Yeah. I mean, he got a second one very quickly because he needed more. Yep. And now his whole life revolves around these dogs, and they bring him a lot of joy, and vice versa. And of course, they're both rescue dogs. Right. And I've seen the life-changing effects that these animals can have. And
we have a number of animals at home as well, outside of, you know.
You got a whole farm, right?
We've got all kinds of stuff, yeah. We've got a couple of dogs. We've got a bunch of barn cats. We've got horses and goats and chickens and all kinds of stuff. But one of the big reasons why we decided to do that is the fact that it was good for our kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Teaching them responsibility, making them actually do things. Every day having to go collect the eggs. That's a great thing for kids to learn how to do. Absolutely. Especially the days when they don't want to. It's
that
so
work
good.
ethic.
That's right.
Well, I think that, you know, when I moved over to the animal shelter, there was definitely people in my life that are like, okay, you are the vice president of marketing for a swag company. Yeah. And now you're going to run an animal shelter. This feels like a downgrade.
Well, it's
what's
the
strategy here? Shift.
Move. Yeah.
Hey, I'm all about taking risks, you know, period. In a story, you know, I love a risky career move. I love doing something that people don't expect of me. I love exploring different sides of my interests or my abilities. And sort of pushing myself. But yeah, there were definitely people that were like, you're doing what now? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not only going to do this, I'm going to love it. And there is nothing I won't do in the animal shelter environment. I cleaned cat kennels at 7:30 this morning. Sure. And loved every second of it. And I don't feel
second
pretty much. Yeah. Okay. I don't feel like I'm too good for it. And I don't think that it's a very valuable and important work.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree
And to
with that.
some extent, it's more important, it's more important than selling swag. You know what I'm saying? So
I hear you.
I didn't
Yeah.
really feel like it was a downgrade, but I definitely had people say, why would you sort of take a step back?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever saw it as a step back or anything like that. It's a shift, certainly,
Yeah.
in direction. I mean, I did that when I took this job, right? I came from the technology sector. I then went to a credit union in Idaho, and a lot of my friends were like, "What are you doing? Like, this
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense at all." And they're right, it didn't to them.
Yeah.
Just like your switch probably didn't make sense to a lot of external people
Yeah.
either. But it doesn't have to make sense to them either.
Yeah. Well, and I think that once you kind of find your comfortability in the position and you
Yeah.
start showcasing that, right? You
Right.
start telling people and your social feed starts to reflect that new position, right?
Mhm.
If it works for you, it does become very natural, you
Yeah.
know? And I
Yeah.
think that's like kind of what happened to me is people were like, oh yeah, you do have 2 rescue dogs. Oh yeah, we kind of forgot about that. You know what I'm saying? They're like, the big thing that no one can get over is how much I love cats now, because and I was super upfront with the board. I did. I told them this.
Before they
Before I
hired
even
you?
interviewed when I talked to the board, the
I'll
past
talk
president.
to you, but I hate cats.
I said, no, here's exactly what I said. I said, I'm going to be honest with you right now. I said, I don't hate cats, but I don't love them. But more importantly, I don't want to see them die. Isn't that sort of the qualification? And she laughed and she goes, keeping them alive is our number one priority. So if you are
feel like that's
interested in that, this really happened. If you're interested in that, that works for us.
I feel like that's a fairly low bar.
I know, right? Yeah, I know. But
I don't want to see them die.
But
I don't love them, but I
right.
don't want them to
I
die.
just wanted to be honest because
Yeah.
I didn't want to be something I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I will say it was one of the things that my really close friends, they literally were like, but you're going to be around cats all day and you are not a cat person. And now this is not a joke. I love cats so much that I actually prefer to clean cat kennels than dog kennels because it's my chance to spend time with them because I have dogs at home, but I can't have cats because my youngest son's allergic to them. And so it's my chance to get to actually have a little cat time. And my friends are like, who are you? Like, your Snapchat is filled with cat selfies. Like, we don't even recognize you now. And I'm like, listen, they grew on me, man. Like, I love them so much now.
At East Idaho Credit Union, we're changing the future of business with our Velocity Money Market account. You can receive unbeatable returns on tiered interest rates. We have rates up to 2.02% annual percentage yield. East Idaho Credit Union puts local businesses first because when you do better, we all do better. Federally insured by the NCUA.
What do you want to do?
I definitely have an interest in serving our community and our area in some other way. So, before I was an elected official, I was that person like rah, 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 term limits. And now that I am
Now you're
one,
like, I want to be a king.
right. No. But now that I am one, you realize you know nothing for like 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
takes so long to understand how
Right.
government works that thinking that someone can accomplish anything or actually do anything very well in their first 4 years-ish is ludicrous. Now I know that. And now I am more interested in candidates that have actually been able to become reelected and to learn more information in more than one term and seeing those folks in office. Now, I don't mean 40 years, but I do think that I'm comfortable with 20. I really am. Because now that I've served with somebody who's, I think, on their 16th year, I now know it really takes that long to get good at this.
So at 16 years, they're finally useful.
Well,
That's disappointing.
well,
to
I
hear.
know, isn't it? It really, well, they provide this depth of experience and this historical background that I think is so useful. And so I hope to become that at some point in time. And it's no secret that I don't think it's a secret that I'll be running for my 3rd term on the Idaho Falls City Council next year. And it's wild to think that I have almost 8 years under my belt. It's just
Are you
such a large part of my life now.
Well, sure. Yeah. So are you surprised then at how little you feel like you still know?
It's not that I feel like I know little. I think, I got this question about power today. And if I have any interest in pursuing something professionally in the power field at some point in time. And I responded to this person and I said, well, I still feel like I know so little after 7 years almost. And they're like, but you know so much more than the average person that might be interested in this. And I'm like, that's absolutely true. But, transportation is a sector that I've just sort of become this expert in. And I just really love it. And I know so much about it now. And I feel like it is something I'm really good at. But I think that every elected official, particularly at a city or a county level, there is still weaknesses. There are still blind spots that you don't have down.
That's why you have a bunch of them.
That's why you have a bunch of them.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, that length of time does provide experience that I think is really useful. But
one of the things that I'm always impressed with when I do talk to like a Governor Little is his ability to switch from topic to topic to topic and at least be able to sound intelligent about all of them.
Right.
That always impresses me with public servants who have spent really a long time just being exposed to all these different topics. And some of them are extremely complex as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think that one of the challenges of being an elected official is being able to communicate in that way with your constituents and be able to give a 30-second or a 3-minute response that makes sense to them. I mean, I feel like that's your job to learn it well enough to explain it. Yeah. That can also make you dangerous, right?
Sure.
Because it sure can make you appear like an expert, right? And I think every elected official has probably used that technique in a campaign or a debate, right?
Of course, yeah.
But you do learn at least a little about a lot of things.
Well, and I think it's incumbent on the elected official to make sure that they have great staffers, right? That really are the ones who figure out how all that stuff really works.
Before I ran for city council, I had absolutely no idea how important staff and directors were going to be to what I do, and how actually the most important relationship is not between council and mayor. It's actually between council and directors.
I think that's true.
100 to 1. They really are the ones that hold all of the information and the expertise that you need to make a good decision.
Yeah. What do we need a mayor for then?
I know, right?
What is different about the person who says, yeah, I want to go into this stuff. I want to go into government, local government, public service. What makes somebody do that?
I think that you have to have a personality that is sort of constructed around a desire to serve other people, or a desire to be someone. Now, what I mean by that is, dangerous. I know it does. Yeah, it absolutely is. Because I have ran a lot of campaigns for state officials, county, city, mayoral races. I've done a couple of judges. And I think half the candidates really, truly have this desire to change their community in some way. They think they have a skill or a talent they can bring. Or honestly, the more time goes on, because I started campaigning probably back in 2013-ish, a desire to change something because they're really mad. And they're really disappointed, right? And that anger or even that fear is very motivating to people to want to run, okay? We saw a lot of that in our last city elections of individuals who were afraid of COVID-related mandates. They were afraid of legislation that might do something they thought was harmful to their families, their businesses, and that was highly motivational for them. Yeah. But unfortunately, I would say the other half of officials, they really want that ability to say, look, I'm doing something, and have that position. I'm not even sure that it's a power thing as it is I want to make a name for myself. I want to leave this legacy, and I want people to know who I am and what I'm about.
Bad,
and that's not all bad.
Yeah.
No. In fact, one of the reasons why I think we're such a well-ran state is we really do have really quality elected officials. And I think many of them ran just on a pure desire to serve and do something different with their skills. And I think that's kind of why I ran.
Yeah. Well, and it can be both, right? Like
absolutely.
It can be somebody who wants to make something of themselves, but also wants to make a name for themselves serving their community. Okay.
So a couple of years ago, this study comes out, and it basically talks about how they've just kind of recently started to research and discover that some people don't have this voice running in their head. And I've got 4 kids. My oldest at the time, I think, was a junior in high school. Yeah, I was junior maybe. And he starts talking to my daughter who's also a teenager, about this crazy thing and about how, can you believe that people don't have this running story or someone telling them like, oh man, this inner dialogue. And I'm like, well, that's me. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you don't like something's not going in your mind right now. Like when there's a silence, there isn't this script going. And I was like,
what?
No.
What's going on up there?
Nothing. I am focused on the things happening around me.
So you're just present with your surroundings,
yes,
as opposed to thinking. Like, what? How do ideas happen?
I know.
Like,
so
do you have like an on deck circle, or is it all just batter up?
Just so you
everything's batter
yes.
up?
So just so you know, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk about this on Dragon Slayer because I've told so few people about this, but those I have, they're like, we have 1,000 questions for you.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
But I will tell you, this to me is so foundational to my success.
Sure.
Because every time I've failed, I don't have this voice inside of me.
You don't have anything second guessing you.
Yes. I don't have this thing inside of me going, oh my gosh, you're a failure. Don't do this again. I don't have that. Now, I don't think I have an inflated sense of self either. So I want to make that clear. I don't think anyone would consider me to be wildly vain or braggarty.
Not wildly.
But not wildly. Just maybe a little bit. But, but I don't have that. The rare occasion it happens. So there is one time I said something one time, and like 5 seconds later, I immediately regretted it. And there was just for a split second, I was like, I better go fix that. Because I will forget it happened. So
it didn't really register.
No. So the downside is I think it's really hurt my memory because a lot of that replay, I think I've studied quite a bit of this now. Part of the replay that like everyone else has is it's creating a memory. Right. So my memory is actually not that great. And I take a lot of notes and I really try to know a subject because the more I know it, the more I can recall it.
Yeah. The less you have to rely on
the less I have to rely upon like true short-term memory.
Interesting.
I also, so part of this is like, I can't see myself in my mind. So like I dream like first person shooter style. Like if I dream, I am seeing it like I would see the world right now. Yeah. I can't watch myself do anything.
I don't do that in dreams either.
Good.
I'm always first person shooter.
Look what else we have in common. You like that?
I do have like an inner conscience though. That might be.
I have a conscience. I just don't have a voice.
I'm just kidding. Okay,
but it made pageantry, for example, really hard for me because one of the biggest challenges in pageantry was the coaches will say, visualize, right? Visualize yourself moving in this way or turning your body, but I can't do it.
Your brain just doesn't do it.
I can't do it.
Oh, this is so interesting.
So it's like really hard for me, but I will say it's why I don't hesitate to run for city council at 29 or however. I think I was like 32.
I was going to say, when I asked, did you ever at any point say, man, this isn't for me? And your response was instant.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that was really a fast response. I can definitely see the positives of having no inner voice like this.
Yeah.
Tell me about the negatives. Like, what problems does it cause you other than your memory?
Yeah.
Your short-term memory is not great.
Yeah, the memory's really hard. I think that, risks always come with challenges. And when, for example, I'm talking to my husband, like when I took on a new job or, when we started our own little design studio, it's harder to focus, I think, actually on the negativity of a situation, because if you want to do something, like if I'm like, okay, well, I want to do this,
it's
that
just
inner critic, I just go. And that inner critic that sometimes does stop you from making a bad choice
isn't
necessarily there.
How do you evaluate like the risks, rewards, pros and cons of something without that like inner voice?
I think this is where collaboration and relationships really come in. And why, I'm really lucky to have a husband I love talking to because he's very reliable for good advice and to see those risks and those maybe the downsides that I'm not always seeing. particularly when it comes to a decision about myself, right? This isn't when I'm making a decision about infrastructure or something, I'm looking at those from a very different perspective. But when I'm making my own choices that have to do with my own skills, abilities, esteem, all the things, it's good to have friends and a spouse and people to say, okay, here's what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? And, maybe what am I not seeing? Because that voice of self-doubt, it does protect you too, to some extent, right?
Totally.
The fight or flight, and I don't have like a great instinct that way. And it's also something that wasn't developed that well because my parents were kind of obsessed with like keeping me safe. So like I've never broken a bone or like had a stitch.
Really? I was gonna say you must have had so many injuries through your life.
No, I do have a bruised foot right now, truly because a tube of croissants dropped on my foot at the store last week, and my entire foot is black. I'll show you later. It's wild. But like I don't get injured because I was sort of taught like let's not do risky things.
Right.
So like I don't really play any sports. I don't ski. I don't do anything like that. The riskiest thing I do physically now would probably be road biking.
With some croissants.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Tell me what a story that is. I bike now, and I was taught like you never bike on a road. You would never get off the sidewalk. And my husband's like, that's illegal, and we're gonna teach you to like ride a bike like an adult. But I was terrified to like go down 17th Street. Like I would never do that until I met him, and he was like, you'll be okay. Like a bike where my feet don't touch the ground. That wasn't a thing till I was like mid 30s. He's like, yeah, that's not how you ride a real bike. We're going to buy you an adult bike with the seats like high. Like that's how this works.
Do you find that sometimes you hurt people's feelings unintentionally?
It's so funny how quickly you got there because it is such a part of my personality. Again, it is that lack of inner voice. I don't always know when I'm gonna maybe come off in a way that could hurt someone's feelings, and it's something I have worked so hard on in the last 10 years particularly. It started off with bad email tone. Like I was so like famous like in my mid-20s for like sending emails that seemed like really harsh and they were never meant to be that way. And then I'd have coworkers like, wow, like you're kind of upset. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I was just getting to the point, And they're like, you could use some work on this. Yeah. So, but it is something though that, again, thankfully, coworkers and supervisors, bosses had pointed out, like, you kind of seem, you're like the nicest person, but your emails are coming off a little rough. And so I will not obsess, but I will spend a lot of time wordsmithing to ensure that I don't come off that way. And it really is because I'm a really direct person. And I think that, again, part of that is the inner voice not coming through very well, obviously. But it's also just kind of my style that it turns out lying is just like a lot of hard work. It's so much work to like remember it all. Yeah. And when you have a bad memory like I do, you can't rely on that. Like if you've made up some story, to remember that consistently is really hard. So my husband will say, you are the worst liar. Like you're so bad at it. And because I don't have the memory or the bandwidth to remember the lie I told. Yeah. So I do tend to be really direct, and I think that's overwhelmingly helped me both in my life as an elected official and as just a leader and a manager of people, because my number one rule for all of anybody who has ever worked for me is this: do not lie to me. We can get over anything. Like if you've made a mistake, mistakes happen. Let's work through it. Yep. Do not lie to me.
That really tips me over too. I don't like that.
Because I need that, even if you're not a direct person, I need you to just be honest with me, because I'm always going to be honest with you.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I think that's just kind of important.
Yeah. I have some similar problems where I'm really, really direct at times. And in my 20s, I was very, very direct to the point of maybe being mean. And sometimes that still comes out occasionally. And so I've had to, like when I type an email out, especially if I know it's like kind of a charged sort of situation, I will try to swing as far positive as I'm capable. I'll usually read it out loud as I type it too. And then like a lot of times I'll be like, Andrea, can you read this before I send this? And just to make sure I got the tone right on things.
I do that all the time with my assistant or my husband. If it's like not work related, I'll have somebody else read it, because I've got the same problem.
Yeah.
But I do think I'd rather be that than the other way.
I agree. I think I think there's this thing like ruinous empathy, right? Where you're so quote unquote nice that you're unwilling to be honest with people about what you think or how you feel or what you see or your take on something. And that's ruinous. Like, that's not helpful in any way.
Well, when you don't pick a side, you're picking a side, right?
Right.
I mean, and I think that is hands down one of the most difficult challenges that elected officials face.
Yeah.
They want to please everybody.
Right.
And saying, actually, I just disagree with you, and this is how I voted, and this is why. And, that is so hard. It is so hard,
really
especially
hard.
sometimes you disagree with people that you know, you love, or you respect in the community, in your neighborhood.
I'm so deeply appreciative of people who do that, though.
It's,
it takes bravery to do that.
I have a neighbor, or had a neighbor, who had said in an email, if you approve this thing, I am going to sell my house and move.
Mm-hmm.
And it was...
Did you just respond with like a listing agent's
I
contact
know.
information?
I'll be honest. When the for sale sign went up, because she kept her word.
She did.
She did. I was like, this is amazing. Like, I love you for keeping your word.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to lie to you. And I bet I'm definitely, I got a good chance of getting a better neighbor than you. So I am not sad about any of this. I may have texted the photos of the for sale sign to other neighbors so that we could all celebrate.
I've come to this point in my life where after some experience and a little bit of practice of tempering the directness a little bit, I've realized that I've kind of landed on two principles that I always try to follow. And the first one is be honest, but be kind. And I try to mix those as much as I possibly can, because I think it's really, really easy to be honest, but not take into account how it might feel to the person receiving the information or the feedback or whatever. And you can be nice and be honest at the same time. Yeah, so that's something I've always really tried to do.
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't say I've moved beyond the honesty, but I will, when I move into that sounded bad. Still honest.
Since being elected, I've really moved past honesty.
No, I'm just at that point in my career that, I'm managing people now in an animal shelter environment that are under a high amount of stress.
Yeah.
And they, we deal with the worst of humanity every day.
Yeah,
period. End of story.
Yeah.
We have seen so much bad and it's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. It's overwhelming, for me, where, I may interact with somebody who's being negative or who's doing something that I don't find very morally sound once in a while. You know what I'm saying? But, every day we're pretty much dealing with someone who's either lying to us or, abandoning animals outside of our building in the middle of the night. Just these really kind of dark acts that it's hard to get over, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I have moved, it's like everyone knows my honesty rule, but I'm also trying really to inspire them to handle that stress in a healthy way, because it's very easy to get wrapped up in it. In fact, there is a high amount of depression, mental illness, suicide in animal rescue workers.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it
makes sense though.
It's called compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
It's very easy to just be so overwhelmed by all of the bad that happens and the death that can happen, that you get wrapped up in that. And it's really hard to see out of that. So I'm trying really, really hard to develop those skills of sort of nurturing and letting go of the day to day and having them not take it home, while also striving to be more. Yeah. I mean, we're a small nonprofit, nobody gets paid that great, you know what you're getting into in animal rescue, and especially in the nonprofit. And so it's not worth taking all that home, but you also have to inspire to, I think, do more, because you are responsible for living, breathing things. And that is a very serious responsibility that if you don't think of it that way, it's very easy to become careless. It's very easy to I don't know, not see outside of the harsh realities and try to think bigger and dream bigger for the animals and our mission, because you can get all wrapped up in the emotions of the day.
Yeah. The story's incredible. One of the things that sticks out in what you talked about is along the way you talk about all the people that for whatever reason saw something in you, for whatever reason took you under their wing. Tell me about the people that helped mentor you and why that helped you and why that was important to you.
You know, I really, you know, I drop a lot of names, you know, today in this podcast, because there were so many people along the way that really did believe in me. And, you know, I think what they have taught me is you have to sometimes you have to take a chance on people, you know? My very first real boss at the mall, you know, Dustin Christensen, he moved on he's still in entertainment and mall management and all kinds of stuff in Texas, actually. You know, he made the conscious choice to believe in me, but also to teach me, and that he wasn't afraid to share that information. And I think that you do run into a lot of leaders who they don't want you to know what they know.
Yeah.
And Justin wasn't like that. And he also told it to me straight. He was very like, okay, this is what they're going to think about you. And this is how you're going to combat that, because you're 22 and they're not going to want to listen to you. Right. And no one's ever been 22 in this job. Right. And, you know, he told me the truth. Yeah. I think that was really important. You know, Eric Isom at Ball Ventures, you know, not only did he let me make that phone call and, you know, get forgiven, he just let me be me, even if that was not what they sort of expected. He let me create that position. He let me do things and experiment. I mean, I think about all the video and the blogging that no one had done, and that he just totally let me experiment and do what I wanted to do. Yeah, really cool. I think that's, you know, just super cool. Although my husband has never been my boss, we've always kind of been, you know, side by side. He's taught me a lot about how important communication is and communication tone is. He is an incredible writer. He makes these birthday posts every year for people, and it's like you beg to like get on the list because it's like prose. It's really like incredible. Yeah. He's never written a bad email. He has delivered bad news in the most beautiful way you've ever seen. He's so good at it, and that's something that he really helped me with. You know, even though not as my boss, he helped me a ton. You know, I had I've had this is my second time now in a position where a board director has been my boss. Right. And it's a very different kind of relationship. Very different, yeah. They're not there for the day-to-day. But man, have I had some amazing ones. You know, I've got Chris Wiersma right now, who oversees United Way of Southeast Idaho, or Bonneville County. And she is a straight shooter who is also so forgiving of my lack of experience in animal rescue, knowing that I am always aiming to improve, to do better, to do right. And that as long as I keep focused on that, she's there with her experience with the Idaho Humane Society, actually, to say, oh, this is actually how you do this. And they've been so generous with their time. I've got a treasurer right now who I've never seen work harder on any board, who is truly being a treasurer. And that is so hard to find. Yeah. So the time they're investing in me is pretty incredible, you know? Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, without that leadership, you know, and I think that's led me to very early on, as early as Grand Teton Mall, I began an internship program. So I have had probably about 12 interns in my life, and that's kind of a lot, I think, for what I've done. Because I feel so passionate. This is actually the only position I've had thus far without an intern yet. Because I feel so passionate about doing what my first boss did, which is pass along that information and teach that next generation, you know, the skills that we have. Yeah, amazing. Okay, last question. Bailey, you know what it is, right?
I have a question.
Okay,
really quickly. What advice would you give to somebody who's starting out in their career path?
You know, I definitely think take risks and trust yourself. You're not going to know everything, and don't walk into any job pretending like you know exactly what you're doing. But you also have to have a healthy sense of sort of fake it till you make it. You know, I have landed in every single job I've had. There is a big missing piece of the puzzle that I didn't know anything about. Research it, study it, call people, ask for help. Never be afraid to ask for help. never be afraid. I think generationally, you have some people in your life that just will never reach out. And I think one of my very, very best friends, her name's Michaela Matlack. She's a CEO of Development Workshop. She has really changed my life, actually, in not being afraid to say you need help and to ask for that. And so young people, don't be afraid to go out there and ask your friends or other people in this industry for help. I think you'll find an amazing community of people that do want to see you succeed too.
Yeah. Beautiful. That feels like a pretty good spot to end. You've been amazing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Snake River Animal Shelter, City Council of Idaho Falls. Do you have any social media that you have people follow?
At MZD Official is primarily my handles.
Mm-hmm.
You always have a little bit of fun on Instagram. You get to see some puppies and some kittens, baby.
Love it.
And then at Snake River Animal Shelter on Insta and Facebook. You can't not love your cat memes and your videos, your dog videos. We have them all.
Love it. Thank you for joining us on the Dragon Slayer podcast by East Idaho Credit Union.